Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Odessa Warren, and on behalf of Ibraaz, I'm delighted to welcome you to today's In Conversation between Hrair Sarkissian and Khaled Hiatlih. We gather today in the context of Hrair's beautiful exhibition, Stolen Past, which is on view upstairs in the Majlis. The work very much focuses on the destruction and looting of the Raqqa Archaeological Museum in northern Syria, which was largely looted and destroyed by ISIS between 2013 and 2017. The show was co-commissioned by the Aichi Triennale in Japan and Ibraaz London, and it's on view until the 24th of May. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, there'll be time after the talk, and I highly encourage you to go and spend some time in there. And so today is an opportunity for us to dive deeper into the exhibition and its research and themes. So by way of very short introduction, we'll be hearing from the artist himself, Hrair Sarkissian. So Hrair is a conceptual artist working across photography, film, sculpture, and installation. He is a second-generation photographer, having trained in his father's photography studio in Damascus. A Syrian of Armenian descent, he has exhibited internationally, and his work is interested in how absence can be made visible, particularly for communities whose memory is marked by histories of violence, among other things. I'm also really thrilled that we're joined today by Khaled Hiatlih, who is an archaeologist and cultural heritage specialist with more than 15 years of experience in documenting endangered heritage and combating the illicit trafficking of artifacts from Syria and Iraq. At Heritage Roots and Leiden University, he leads the Focus Raqqa project, documenting the looting of the Raqqa Museum, tracing displaced artifacts and raising public awareness about the destruction and illegal trade of Syrian cultural heritage. His work combines archaeological field experience with digital documentation and heritage protection. So we're going to be hearing from both of them today, and as always, we'll have questions for the audience at the end, so please do stick around. And so now I'd like you to please join me in giving a warm welcome to Khaled.
Thank you very much, Odessa. First, I would like to thank Ibraaz team to having me here, and Hrair, the great photographer. Thank you. I will give a short presentation today about cultural heritage in Syria and what happened there. It's like story, we can say, about that. So I will start with Syrian map here. As you know, it's Syria as one of the Middle East civilization or countries contain thousands of archaeological sites, and from prehistoric around 10,000 BC until the Islamic era and the Ottoman time. We have 6 important archaeological sites were registered in the World Heritage Sites in UNESCO. And you can see in the image here, it's start from Damascus to Palmyra, Busra, Aleppo, and the rest of these sites. And the institution who is responsible for the archaeological heritage, we can say in Syria, it's named Directorate General of Antiquity and the Museum, DGAM. So in 2011, when the revolution started, Syrian archaeologists still remember what happened in the Iraqi Museum in 2003. So they start acting immediately to protect the museum by hiding the artifacts and moving them to safe places. A few months later, when the violence escalated, many of local and international parties become involving in the Syrian war. At that time, DGM could not reach all the Syrian archaeological sites, and we lost the connection between the teams around the country. You can see in the map here, we have main 4 parties fighting there, the Syrian regime and the Free Syrian Army, Kurdish forces, and ISIS in that time. Later, we start receiving more reports about damage all around Syria. But the worst came from area controlled by ISIS. Illegal excavation, destruction and bombing monuments, looting museums, and smuggling artifacts outside the country. In June 2013, all the Syrian World Heritage Sites were officially registered as endangered sites. So much of this site were badly damaged, such as Palmyra, Bosra, and Aleppo. You can see here in the picture, Palishmin temple from Palmyra. It was like that. They bombed it and they lifted just piece of stones. In Aleppo here, you can see the picture before and after. This is just near the citadel. You can see in the corner where the Umayyad mosque destroyed partly, and markets, and the other mosque and caravanserai from the Ottoman era. For Raqqa especially, in March 2013, the rebels took control of the Raqqa, making as the first major city to be freed from Assad regime. A few months later, ISIS took control of the city and declared it as a capital of its caliphate, or the Islamic State. So Raqqa became most dangerous city around the world, and later will become more dangerous when the liberating battle will begin. This is the Raqqa map, the old city. There is a main monument inside the old city. You can see the shape of the wall, the old wall of the city, the grand mosque in the center, and there is Qasr al-Banat, or Girls' Palace, named with letter D, and Baghdad Gate in the corner, south corner, and there is a museum inside the old city. We have also an important site just 7 kilometers to the west of the city. It's called Herakla Warehouses, where most of the other unexhibited artifacts moved there and stored there. The museum itself, it contains 2 floors, as you can see in the map here, with a garden, and it's just a small museum. At that time, when you can see in the timeline, it's built in 1860, and they use it as administration office for the Ottoman, and later even they keep the same rule during the French mandate. After Syrian independence in 1946, it was used as a police station for almost 20 years. Then the building became headquarters of Raqqa Governorate before it's converted into museum in 1981. The museum, as I said, it's a small museum, but it's important because the collection representing the history of Raqqa province in total. These are the images from inside the museum before destruction. Later, when we saw the uprising and the unstable situation in Syria, the DJM team started acting a little bit to protect the situation or the cultural heritage there. So they collect all the artifacts, move them into the warehouses, secure the doors, and close the museum. You can see the image here, they welding the doors and adding more extra layer metal sheet for the doors. They adding another extra enforcement layer to seal the storage room and the doors. So they add bricks here. For the Herakla warehouses, where I mentioned it's 7 kilometers to the west, they cover the whole area with sands and dirt with stones to seal the door, we can say, from looting. As a last step, they decide to move the most valuable 500 artifacts from the museum to the central bank of Raqqa. This collection includes, as you can see here, golden coins, silver coins, seals, and cuneiform writing. Approximately around 2 months later, the first theft was recorded, with several boxes looting from the museum. The team did a quick inventory there and showing that 900 artifacts were missing in that time. The next theft come from the central bank, where all the stored artifacts were looted, all the 500 artifacts. The third one is come from the warehouses of Herakla. The thieves broke through the walls and stole some artifact from inside it. So you can see the hole, they open it there. So the team decide, you can see the teams who are working in Raqqa, the team decide to move the rest of the artifact from the warehouses and move it to another place near the guard house. So he moved it to his house just to protect it as he can. But later, and I will tell you later, that's already lost too. So in 2014, when ISIS controlled the city, most of the museum collection was then looted, along with the storage rooms, except some mosaic panels because they were too heavy to move and steal. In 2017, after 4 months of heavy fighting, Raqqa became free from ISIS again. But during the battle, the museum building itself and the historic landscape suffered extensive damage. You can see the picture of the museum, and they lost a big part from the wall in the eastern side. And this is the images from inside the museum after liberation. At that time, I was in Netherlands with Rasha Haki and Olivier in Nieuwenhuis. We decided officially to launch Focus Raqqa project. So we start to documenting all the damages and incidents related to the museum and its collection, digitizing, reading, and translating the available information from the museum catalog and inventory, because it was in that time taken by mobile phones since like 15 years ago, and it's not high quality. And we collect all the photos from the museum, from DGM archive, and from the involved excavation teams in Raqqa. After that, we worked to creating database for all the missing artifacts, including photos and the related information, to share it later with law enforcement agencies like Customs, Europol, or Interpol. As a result, from the project, we have now official legal proof of ownership of these artifacts in case they are found in any auction houses, museums, or any other places. In 2019, I participated in the first phase of the museum restoration process. The activities aim to rehabilitate the museum building so it can play the same role in the future. This is the images from the museum when the team was working there. You can see they're rebuilding the walls, the eastern part, and clean everything. So this is the museum from inside and from outside, but after restoration. So they did good work to restore all the monument or the building itself. In 2023, the museum opened the door for the public again, displayed some of the remaining artifacts, as well as some 3D printed replicas for the missing artifacts. And even in 2024, just a few months before Syria was liberated, a documentation project was carried out using smart water to label all the archaeological artifacts stored in the warehouses in the northeast area, including the remaining Raqqa Museum collection. Now we have full updated database with high quality pictures for the most of artifacts stored in the area. So I hope I show you that it starts from 2013 until now. So it was in perfect condition, or we can say in good condition, through the years. It destroyed, liberated, destroyed, and then it's restored again and reopened for the public. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for coming. And I'd like also again to extend my say thank you to Ibraaz and Odessa for hosting this talk. So I will start my talk since Khaled spoke everything about my project. I will start my talking about how I came into the idea of doing this project. So in 2018, I met Olivier Nieuwhausen in Holland in Leiden Museum. I read an article about these stolen artifacts from the museum in Raqqa and how they are dispersed all around the world. And through research and digging more online, I came across the Focus Raqqa project and the collaboration also they were doing with the University of Utrecht, I guess. So that's how I got in touch with Olivier Nieuwhausen, and I wrote to him and said, I really want to come and meet you. And I also invited a good friend of mine, Vali Mahlouji, who is a thinker and writer. And so we thought we do this project together. And we went to meet Olivier at the museum, Rijksmuseum, Archaeology Museum in Leiden, where Olivier was just installed a new exhibition about cuneiform tablets that were reprinted, recreated from the documents that they were saved from the Museum of Raqqa. And so from there we started digging more and more, and we wanted to do a project about all this, about the museum, that it was destroyed, and also about the artifacts that were gone. So my first idea of doing this project was not printing these prints what you've seen upstairs, or you haven't seen it yet. I wanted to do, we had two ideas. One is to recreate the museum, but an empty museum in a space where people can just walk around and look at the cabinets and whatever is left, empty cabinets, let's say. And the other idea was to create holograms from these objects that we have documents. Sadly, Olivier passed away, and we had to put the projects in the drawer, and I kind of put it aside and moved on doing other things. Until 2024, I was approached by the curator Hrair Sarkissian, inviting me to take part at the Aichi Triennale, and that's where I suggested three different projects for the Aichi Triennale, but the three of them were kind of they refused for safety and environmental reasons. So that's where I came up with this idea of doing this installation for Aichi. And then I got in touch with Khaled, who took a long time to reply. And then one day I called him. And we met, and Khaled was very kind to provide me the access to all these images that were saved from the museum, that people photographed before they bring all these objects into safety. I think there are like 25,000 photographs. Yeah. So from these from these photographs, I started working and clearing all the background of these objects to uniform them all, and started printing the lithophane idea. So the lithophane project, the word so these are, I'm just putting images from Raqqa here so you can see the city. I think one thing Khaled forgot to mention, that the museum during ISIS was converted into a kind of, the front side was butchers, barbecue and kebab shops, and at the back they were kind of restoring electrical washing machines, fridges, this kind of stuff. So these are the images that I put my hands on because of Khaled, and then I cleared these images and made the lithophane. So the concept of lithophane in China, it came from something it's called anhua, which means secret or hidden decoration. And they used to make on unfired pieces of ceramic, they used to write inscriptions, secret encryptions, so they can send to each other among Buddhist monks. And also for decorational reasons that you can see here, like floral kind of things. And in 1827, a French diplomat who kind of invented a similar idea, working with images, not text, where he engraved drawings on pieces of ceramic and baked them 3 times, and then when he put the light behind it, and then it appears the image. So his name was Paul de Bourgoing, and he patented this. He patented lithophane in Europe in 1827, and it became and factories were born in Europe all over Germany, France, UK. Where under the license they used the same method and became a whole commercial thing, where it's kind of permitted people to start having images, because that was also the beginning of photography, where Joseph Niepce, Nicéphore Niepce, made his first photograph, Le Graal, that was in 1827, which was, I think it's this photograph. And it coincided at the same time as the lithophane. I think there was so much thirst of people wanting to have images of themselves or instead of paintings. So that helped a lot with this expansion of the idea of commercializing lithophane. So there were factories that started making these lampshades out of drawings, engraving on ceramic, and it became a whole thing until I think end of 19th century. That was the production was stopped. It was not trendy anymore, and I think around 20th century, the Japanese started to using lithophane again, making set of teapots for American soldiers with images of geisha at the bottom of the cup. I think that was the end of this method of lithophane. So I wanted to do, sorry. I was so excited doing with this idea, but it turned out for me doing ceramics, it's very, expensive, very complicated to do this method. And then again, online, I just found out that I could do it with 3D printing. So I did a 3D printing course in London for 3 days, and I bought a printer, and I started doing all these prints by myself. Of course, it took me 4 months to kind of reach the result that I really wanted to have at the end. So this is the first print I did in a shop that was really very bad and very expensive. So that's where I thought I can do this by myself, and then I started printing everything in my studio. It took me 90 days because the installation is 90 pieces, and each print took me around between 20 to 24 hours to print. So as you see here, this is the installation in Aichi, and then this is in upstairs. Beautiful pictures. So this project, it was kind of, I think, I started to think about it because I was. When the year they bombed Palmyra, I think it was 2013? 15. So I was really very much in shock, and I posted something on Facebook about the loss of this temples. That's something I've been there so many times, and I used to grab my cameras and go there like just one day up to Palmyra and come down. And it was really very hurtful to see the Temple of Bel is completely flat. So I posted something online on Facebook, and then a friend of mine from a Syrian friend who was based in Paris, she wrote something really that shocked me, kind of how can we not think about humans, we only think about stones. And this sentence that she said, it was really made a very deep cut inside me, that I was really very hurted, because it's not, I don't have feelings about humans, of course I do, but this is part of also about who we are as human beings. It's not about as Syrians, but this is the entire humanity, because we lost a lot with the collection that is gone from Raqqa. It's a very big collection, and it says a lot of our existence in the region and also on this planet, of course. And that was for me very compelling to kind of have the drive to start thinking about doing something about these artifacts. So, I mean, I also wanted to talk about a new project that I am working on, which has very much relations to what has been lost in Raqqa, in the objects, the historical artifacts, which is Armenian churches that we lost in historical Armenia, which is now currently Eastern Turkey. So it's a project I'm doing with a colleague of mine, Todd Rees. He's an architect. And we are traveling around Turkey and looking for Armenian churches that are destroyed because of the Armenian genocide. And for me, there is a big connection here between these monuments and the objects that we lost. It's something that's what I try to do with taking pictures of these leftovers, is kind of to rescue them, at least in our imaginations, that to have something that is left, because these also within 5 years, they will also completely gone. So historically in in historical Armenia, there were more than 2,000 churches existed. A lot of them were temples, and then they were converted into Armenian churches, and they dated from 3rd century until 19th century. And currently now, what's left, 234 monuments. The 200 are on the verge of disappearing, and 34 are standing almost. So we are traveling around Turkey, also remote places, climbing mountains, and looking for these places where we can photograph these monuments. So far we've done 70 churches. We traveled twice, and we still have to do 3 more trips to go there. And for me, as an Armenian, to travel to these places, it's really insane, because until today, after 125 years that the genocide took place in Turkey towards the Armenian, I still feel the hatred that people are projecting towards Armenians. And all these trips I do, we don't tell anyone that I am Armenian, because of the fear that people will attack or will do something that is, it's not going to be good for us. And also it will jeopardize our project, that we cannot continue doing this. So we had a few accidents that's like with the police, for instance, Secret Service, who just followed us all the way up the mountain. And it's a funny story, because I keep still thinking about it, because when they stopped us and they asked for our passports, and the first question they asked on the spot, well, is there anyone Armenian among you? So, of course, the Kurdish guy, Behjat, who is with us, he says, no, Todd is Dutch and Hrair is British. But the guy looks at me and said, but what's his origins? So Todd tells him, Behjat tells him that he is Pakistani. But of course, in the passport, it says Hrair Sarkissian, and Yan, it's very common Armenian name. But the guy, he was kind of moved on. And for me, this was a strange thing that they managed to erase the history and the existence of Armenians completely in a way that we don't even exist anymore, even in history, in their history, let's say. So as you can see, these are all destroyed. And some of them, there was a site we didn't have an access because we're not allowed to use tripods on the site. It's Ani, which is also on the eastern side of Turkey. And Ani used to be called the city of 1,001 churches. And there are still churches, like amazing architectural pieces that's still standing almost, but we were not allowed to use a tripod there. And that's why I couldn't take pictures, but we were allowed to take pictures with digital camera. So here, for instance, this is in Mush. It's a monastery from 4th century, Surp Garabet, and it used to be the size of Hackney. And this was like a very important hub for Armenians who would travel from all around the region to go there to study religion and Armenian literature, etc. But from that whole monastery, what's left is this, and it is converted into a toilet now. And this is another monastery. It's 5th century, Surp Arakelot, on the top of a mountain. So the mayor of Mush, in 1967, he just one day decides, I'm going to bomb this. So he brings a tank all the way up and he bombs this monastery. And this is what's left from it. So for me, this project is really, it has a quite a strong connection with what I have done with Stolen Paths, because we don't have any documentation, almost none, from all of these churches I've photographed, because most of them are in remote places, and they all also belong to like villagers who lived on top of a mountain, etc. So a lot of them do not exist in Armenian archives at all. So for me, it's very important to do this. It's also ironic because Armenian genocide historically is the genocide that hasn't been photographed. It was not allowed to be photographed. And here I am doing kind of what I could do with this project. It's just taking pictures of the bits that left almost hanging on. And thank you.
Thank you both so much, and thank you, Khaled, for talking about that recent project. It's incredible. I think it's really interesting to listen to you both speak back to back. I think it really shows what goes into an exhibition, into a project, the research, and how that also feeds a beautiful artistic project, and that conversation between the two, I think is really interesting to kind of put forward here. I just want to bring it back to Raqqa for a second, and ask you, Khaled, to just tell us a little bit more about Focus Raqqa from your perspective, putting that project together, your relationship to Syria, having left Syria, returning, and that kind of timeline that you spoke about, and kind of tell us a bit more about the efforts that really went into it. Because, I mean, you're both speaking from perspectives as Syrians. You talk about this huge cultural loss as not just something that's a loss for Syrians and for Syrian heritage, but for the incredibly important human civilizational story that's being told here. So I think, Khaled, a lot of the questions that I get as someone who's like working at the institution here from audiences is like, what are these works? what are they dated from? What do they mean? What is their significance? And I think for some of people who might not have seen the show or read the exhibition text, a little context is that the Raqqa collection consisted of, I think, 8,000 objects, and there's only about 800 left, 40 of which are on display. So we're talking about a huge material loss. But also what's lost are the records, right? So we don't have those records for the objects that are, I wouldn't say on display upstairs, but those kinds of recreations. I mean, we can debate that later if you want to call them that. So Khaled, if you could tell us a bit more about Focus Raqqa, but also, I think it would be wonderful if you could give us a bit of insight into what these objects are and why they're so significant.
Yeah, for sure, because let me go back a little bit. When I was in Syria, in Damascus, and I was working in DJIM and watching all these destroying images come from Palmyra to Busra to Aleppo, and even from different areas around Syria. The idea is, in that time, I was facing the same issue was Hrair faced, or maybe other Syrian faced. That's the stones are not important more than humans, or we call it in Arabic, al-bashar aham min al-hajar, in that time. So I keep debating with everybody about that, and we know this not just related for Syria, it's related for humanity and representing what the Syrian through the past did from civilizations and art and monument. And in that time I was a little bit displaced, but I was in more, we can say, searching for safety for me and my family. So I left Syria in that time. I smuggled myself as other Syrian refugees. And even it's become worse for me because I am Palestinian in Syria. So I'm a refugee in Syria and then refugee again in Europe. So I like professional refugee now. Okay, yeah, that's the situation. And when I left Syria and went to Netherlands, I know that Leiden University, or the Netherlands institution, was working for almost 30 years in Raqqa. And they are leading all the most of important excavation sites in Tal Sabi Abyad. But since the revolution started until I arrived to Netherlands, nobody contact us, nobody care about the excavation sites, about the work they done, or at least provide some information about the artifact there. They disappeared. So I went to the university, was angry in that time. And I didn't meet anybody there, nobody met me, but Olivier, I met him the first time there. And he totally understands me, and we keep thinking about what we can do in that time. My wife, Rasha, she is archaeologist. She was working with me inside the museum. And then we sat together, we said, okay, we start receiving more destruction reports, we can say, and images, bad images from Syria. At that time, I have good relationship with the last curator of the museum from Raqqa, who come to us in Netherlands. His name Ayham. We said, okay, we'll collect as we can from this information, so at least provide it to these law enforcement agencies. And that's the point where we exactly know that this, we can say, a database we will create, it will be crucial for restoring all these artifacts. And later, a few years later, when we finish everything and we send it to the DJIM and share it with other agencies, we saw that they start seizing more artifacts similar to Raqqa stuff, and then they make investigation and maybe they send it back to Syria or keep it on hold until the situation become as now good in Syria. So it's start from the feeling that we left alone, and the archaeological site or collection in Raqqa, especially from European who was working every year and using this, we can say, advantage from working in Damascus. But later, when the problem happened, they left everything. So we decided, okay, we have to do something as from Syria and Netherlands to make it, at least give it back to Raqqa a little bit. That when we started. But for the collection, it's really important collection because it's showing the mix between the Islamic and we have Christian there, and they have a really good history with creating ceramic. They call it, it's a unique one, they call it Raqqa ceramic. And it's mixed between all these civilization, we can say, or elements inside the collection. And we have very important collection. It's named Kanz Raqqa, the treasure of Raqqa, which I think it's from 5th century Christian tools. They were used in the churches, but it was burned and underground, and they found it later. They burned it and hide from the Mongol attacks. So they burned it to keep it safe, and later we found it after the excavation. We have copy of them inside the Raqqa Museum, and another, or the original one maybe in Damascus now. So that show you that the collection in general representing the mixed and unique history of the whole province at that time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Khaled. And thank you for sharing your story with us and for all of the work that you're doing. Hrair, I mean, you mentioned the blowing up of Palmyra as something that was that had a huge effect on you. And I think that's something that probably a lot of us in this room share. That was an extremely iconoclastic moment. And I think that Daesh or ISIS, did that that was a technique that was used to kind of have these very sensationalist blowing up of these very important historical pre-Islamic spaces and so on and so forth. And although those events were incredibly destructive and catastrophic, and those things can't be reversed, what I've come to understand through some of the research that I've done on this project is that actually looting and the trafficking of illegal antiquities has actually been arguably more damaging, and that we can debate it, but actually it's just something that's more systemic, it's ongoing, et cetera, and it's actually caused so much kind of digging up of vast areas of Syrian landscape, actually, in a way that can actually be seen from satellite imagery. And I think, again, coming back to your question of it's difficult to compel people to care when so many people are being massacred, innocent civilians and so on and so forth. And one of the things I came across was that actually one of the ways to get people interested, the international community interested, is to actually show that Daesh has created an income stream from this kind of illegal trafficking and this kind of illegal antiquities, which I thought was an interesting thing to share with everyone. But Hrair, I wanted to come back to you and the project and Stolen Past and how you came across this story and you were compelled to do something about it, or to kind of make a beautiful artistic project out of it. And I want to ask you actually a bit more. I want to focus on your artistic kind of choices and the kind of material choices that you made. A lot of your work deals with absence. I know I've said that before, and maybe we can get into details about what I mean by that. But for example, projects like Last Scene or Execution Squares, you kind of document through photography daily life or the absence within daily life. And so there's something kind of immaterial about the way that you're kind of trying to make things visible. But it's at once very intimate as well, I would say. Also the kinds of photography studios, the empty photography studio that you photograph in some of your other work. Here you've kind of taken a different approach. I dare say, please correct me, but you've kind of zeroed in fact, on the kind of material that's been lost. And short of recreating it, you've created a very intimate experience with a rendering of the object, right? So I wanted to kind of ask you a bit more about those choices that you made, and also why the color blue for the plants. Yeah.
So the reason I've done lithophane, it's I had these images and I needed to do something to represent them in a way that they don't look beautiful because we lost them, but to make it in a way that's kind of appear and at the same time don't appear. And this is kind of, it's also connected to lithophane, which means stone and bring light. So it's kind of bring this object back to the surface, knowing that they are not there anymore. And so it's kind of, for me, I thought this might evoke more awareness and also wake up people as well, just to realize what we have lost. In my work, it's these past few years, I tried to not get away from photography. I still love photography, and I don't think I will stop until they stop doing films. So I always try to bring something in a way that's not the usual way that I used to hang or photography does, just to print an image and put it on the wall, just to bring it in a way that can evoke emotions more than an actual 2D print. So that's why I liked it here very much, because it's the moment you turn off the lights in these planes, the objects disappear. So they are not there anymore. What you feel is only the relief of the print, but the image itself is gone. And this kind of relation works very well with this with the object. So the color blue, I think it's because I like it because of the darkness. So the outside of the plane, they look black, which kind of, again, I said this many times, it's because I wanted to create this feeling of symmetry once you enter the space. But inside you have the light that makes the blue light and the white light that are coming. It's kind of bring life to the object, let's say.
On that point about the cemetery, I mean, again, for those of you in the audience who don't know, we're showing 48 of these lithophanes. So there's 48 plinths, but there's actually 90 lithophanes. And so I know, Hrair, you have ambitions to kind of show all 90 at some point. So Inshallah. I'm plugging it for you. You know, so we can actually consider this like quite a monumental installation in how big it is actually, if we were to show all 90. And I wondered if you, from the outset of this project, did you know that you wanted to do that many? And did you know that you wanted to kind of recreate a cemetery actually? Was that something that was already in your mind?
So the number, no. I was, because I had the floor plan of the previous space in Aichi, so I was kind of bound to the space, and I couldn't. But then once I started printing, and I think the whole project became really big in my head, then I realized, I mean, I have 25,000 images from Khaled, so I better use them in a way that kind of make it look bigger, because in a sense that when someone walks inside the space, if it's 90, I think the person would disappear. No, it's like, so that's why I went for the 90, and I hope I will be able one day to see it installed in somewhere.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Khaled, just to come back to you and your practice, I mean, 3D printing, which is what Hrair has done in stolen past. He's 3D printed all of those lithophanes himself. I've seen his 3D printer in his studio, it's true. But it's also a very kind of ubiquitous practice now in archaeological, like recovery or restitution, and it's deployed in different ways. I wondered if you could talk to us a bit more about how the new field of like digital archaeology, and specifically like 3D printing, is like a growing field in this idea of like conflict archaeology, or in places where there has been this systematic destruction and looting. And I would be interested to hear your thoughts on what you see as like the limitations of it, as well as like the advantages. Because one of the things that Hrair and I have spoken about in putting stolen past together is actually we can kind of 3D print these objects, but they're also kind of like, they're just gone. And there's a reckoning with that loss that needs to happen in a way.
Yeah, it's a new technology, and there's big debates about it, especially in the archaeological fields. We have the authenticities and the quality, and how we can say the copyright of owning this artifact. So it's really big debate about that, and I have been in this way for many years. And let's say when we start using this technology, it was just as a tool for the archaeology, just to help us in restoration. For example, in Palmyra, when they destroyed the temple and the arch of Tremiouf in Palmyra, so we have scanned before destroying. We have digital copy, and then we use an institute, as I told you before, Institute for Digital Archaeology. They erected the first time 10 years ago. Exactly tomorrow will be the 10th anniversary, to erect a 3D carved copy of the arch from marble. And so they use the marble, real marble, carve it and representing the arch. So it's really good tools, we can say, to make reconstruction projects easier and much cheaper for even inside Palmyra or inside any other sites. We made like small study or research about how much it cost us if we want to restore Bel Temple or Baal Shmuel Temple, and it's cost a lot of money and time. But using this technique, carving, robotic arm carving with the 3D scanned copies, it reduced the time almost like 80%, and the money even around 70%. So this amount, if we have a few millions for restoration, we can restore many buildings or many monuments more than the old technique using hand and carving stuff. This as a tool for restoration, but then we have big debate about the copyright, authenticity, what we can do. Some archaeologists said that, okay, we have artifacts, we found it in the museum, like similar to this one, but the importance of this artifact is not the physical situation, it's the story behind it, the background for that. So even if we lost the artifact from Raqqa Museum, if we still have all this documentation, as we did in Focus Raqqa project, document related, study it, and scientific background of it. So we can really reprint it in a 3D and put it in a museum and even give the whole story about it, even give the story where it's destroyed or lost, and now we print it again. So the situation of losing the artifact or destroying the museum, it's one chapter from the history of this museum or this site in general.
But Khaled, don't you think that's for me the problem with creating these 3D objects, that it's kind of gives the license to steal more, to smuggle more, saying, okay, we have this one, it's fake, so we can steal the real one, it's okay.
No, we can make it in the opposite side, because I think about that. Okay, some people, wealthy people, if we think psychologically, why they want the original stuff, why they want to put original stuff in their houses. Okay, we'll give you fake one, but very detailed copy or high quality copies. Just put it in your house and leave the original one inside the museum. As we suggest now for the British Museum, Irving marbles, it's big debate between Greek and UK now. And the Institute for Digital Archaeology suggests, okay, we'll give very high quality marble copy replica to the museum and ask the museum to bring the original stuff to Greece. And they start debating about that. So it's really complicated.
I think you should give the copy to collectors and keep the original one in the museum.
But the British Museum is collector in that.
No, I'm not talking about British Museum, but in general.
Yeah, we can say it's really complicated, and many people start debating about that. But it gives opportunity, at least, to raise awareness about the situation and how we lost the stuff and who's owning these copies. And it's the original different than the copy, or the copy different than the original.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I think it's clear that these are, like you said, they're just incredibly important tools in situations like in Raqqa, for example, to kind of recover and document as much as possible. But I think, we still kind of come back to this question of the fact that there are like these contemporary histories and historic ones of extreme violence. And I think that there's such a sense of injustice that is imbued in these conversations and in these like material heritage that I think we just can't escape. And I think that this is why these questions of the 3D or the digital or the print kind of rub up against us in these ways that make us uncomfortable. I just wanted to kind of also come back to you, Hrair, on this incredible project about the Armenian churches, because I think it's quite relevant to this discussion. I know, again, speaking to histories of violence, Khaled, Hrair, we can talk about Syria, we can talk about Palestine, we can talk about Lebanon, we can talk about Iraq. I know you do a lot of work in Iraq. And I think, these Armenian churches, the state that they're in these kinds of like, almost kind of decrepit, about to kind of fall down to the completely collapse, they tell those really important histories of the genocide. They're kind of recounting that in their materiality. So I think that's an incredibly important project, and I wondered if you could just expand on that a little bit as well.
I mean, it's the thing is, it's such a live thing until today. It's that the locals in most of Eastern Turkey, it's a habit where people buy metal detectors and go around Armenian churches, villages, mainly cemeteries or churches, and they dig graves to look for treasure. And for me, it's been always this question whenever I encounter someone in Turkey, in this part especially, not in the city in Istanbul, of course, but more in this eastern part. The first question, if they find out that I am Armenian, or if we ask them if they know that there is an Armenian church here or not, they would ask, "Are you going for the gold? Do you know where is it? Can I come with you?" And on this trip now, I just adopted a new system where every time I take a picture of the church or the leftover, there is always a hole in the ground, huge. And it's obviously someone dug there to look for. And the sad thing is that it was very painful for me. This trip is, I encountered the driver who was accompanying us. There was one day he started hit something while I was taking pictures. And then I thought he's just kicking a stone. But then I realized it's a bone. It's a human bone of a leg. So I was very angry, but I didn't say anything because the driver was not a very nice person we had experience with, and he had a bat under his car seats. So I thought I would just take things, count to 10, and then go and put the bone back into the ditch and cover it. So I put it in the ditch, and then I started putting earth on to cover, and then I realized there are pieces of other bones are there, and ribs also that appear on the wall of the inside wall of the grave. It's a grave, and I was so it was so painful for me to see this. After 125 years, even the dead cannot be in peace. And for me, that says a lot about this project too. It's something, as I said before, it's so alive there. It hasn't been dead. And when you walk, for me as an Armenian, especially when I walk in these places or go around, there is something in the air. I feel it. It's like people don't smile, people don't laugh, because they know something has happened in the course of history that they are carrying it with them. Maybe they haven't took part in it, but they know the history of it. So for me, that's what I go through in this project.
Thank you. I mean, that's incredibly powerful and important. We're going to open up for questions soon, so please prepare yourselves with your questions. I just wanted to bring it back a little bit to London, and I want to ask you a question about your work again, Khaled. I mean, again, and kind of come back to this question of like, why is this important when there are wars and there are genocides, and the story that you just told us, Hrair. And I mean, I think if we look at Iran now, for example, cultural heritage sites are being targeted on purpose, like very intentionally, and there's something about when you try and erase a human population, you also erase their cultural heritage, and there's a reason why these sites are being targeted quite actively. And so I think that that is a very urgent question today in so many contexts. It's happening in Gaza, it's happening in Lebanon, in our historical sites there. And I think one subject that we haven't really touched upon yet in the conversation is the trafficking and looting of these objects and the markets for them. Okay, and so we've talked about Daesh as this being like a revenue stream for them, and this piqued people's interest in the international community. But I think we are in London, we are in one of the kinds of hubs for this trade. So Khaled, in your work in kind of trying to recover these objects and kind of track down these illegal trafficking rings, essentially, I think it'd be really great to just hear about your experience, not just in terms of like the work that's done in Syria or in Iraq, but also in Europe or in the West, quote unquote.
Yeah, it's big trade, illicit trafficking, and as I understand from different meetings, I did it in Europe and even in London. London, New York, Dubai are like the hub for all these artifacts. The problem comes with complexity, we can say complicity between the institutions or the action houses when they are accepting this unclear history for the artifact or the ownership series numbers. So as I learned now so far, most of the forgery, we can say, or fake authentication certification come from UAE or Dubai. Yeah, they send it there, they put it a few months there, and they produce another certification and then export it legally to Geneva maybe or to London. And from that time, they start moving like a different, it's similar to, we can say, to money laundering. So they move it from bank to bank to bank to be complicated and difficult to trace it back. So at the same point, if you have illegal artifacts, put it in some place, give it small certification, and then start move it from institution to another one, to another museum maybe, and then he sell it to another one. It's become building history, a new history for the artifact, and then make it easier for them to be officially or legally artifact. But that's the point, because if we register all these artifacts, if we have the smart water tracing, if we have documenting all these looted artifacts, the inventory, the pictures, the histories that give legal proof that this artifact was before in Syria or maybe like from the database of Focus Raqqa project. So it will be very easy for us to retrieve it and bring it back to Syria. I believe so far they understand the situation and even they try to hide it as soon as they can. But in the end, like after 20, 30 years, it will become in the market, and then we can seize it back. That's the goal from the project. I hope that.
Because like they're kind of hot for a while, so then people just sit on them for 15, 20 years and then try and sell them when people, they hope people will have forgotten about them.
Yeah, maybe the Focus Raqqa project database will be out from the internet or stuff, then it will become easier for them to promote it. But I hope I can keep it there.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
I think we've come to a close, but I think to maybe summarize, I think you both, whether one of you has hope and whether one of you doesn't, I think you both have an incredible sense of purpose to what you do and an incredibly strong compass when it comes to what you see as injustice, and I think that's what compels you to do what you do, if I may. But thank you both.
Thank you
So much for your contributions today. It's been really rich. It's a privilege to be in conversation with both of you. And thank you everyone for coming. Please stick around. We're open until 6. And you can go and spend some time in the exhibition upstairs as well. Thank you.